Hello, my name is Matthew Marvin. I also go by ThePokerGypsy. I finally got some time stable in one place, and I'm going to do something that I normally don't do. I'm going to study poker. Listen, I've tried in the past. It just doesn't grab my attention. So what we're going to do, I'm going to film myself sitting down and watching these poker tutorial videos. They're poker lessons and they're free online. Look, obviously I've been playing for a while, so I'm just going to skip past the beginner courses. I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to type in advanced poker training. We're going to see what pops up. That's what we're going to start studying. Either I'm going to learn something or I'm not going to learn anything. 90% chance I'm going to be bored most of the way through. So I do not mean to hurt anybody's business by doing this. This is not a shot at the content creators. This is not a shot at other professionals. However, I will go on record to say this is a promo stunt. 100%. I'm not going to deny that. I'm going to be picking the popular videos with the most views. I'm going to put that video title and the person or people who made it as a title of my video. That's going to help me generate views. So, on the other side of the camera, yes, fellow poker professionals, you could say that I am using your name and your network to grow my fan base. But there's two things I'm missing right now in my poker career. One, there's nobody in my inbox trying to help me with my poker career, except for like stake kings. I don't want to do that. We'll talk about my feelings on staking in another video. Number two, I don't have anybody in my inbox trying to challenge me on a recorded platform. So this is going to solve multiple problems at once. Hopefully these videos can improve the poker world in some way, from the aspect that poker training videos are just boring. Seriously, if I need help falling asleep at night, I watch poker training videos. Alright guys, so I'm on YouTube. I type in advanced poker training, and one video I see with 2.8 million views, it's a video by Daniel Negreanu, and it's called Poker Ranges Explained. Now, before we get into this video, I'm not big on ranges at all. Why? Because you can't guess my range. One thing I pride myself on in my play style is I'll raise with any two cards, and I'm pretty successful at beating you with them. So if I set up my poker strategy to a point where you can't predict what my range is, why should I be trying to predict other players' ranges? Maybe for the weaker players. But this is usually what happens to me. Let's say the run out comes, and right now at this point, 9-3 is the nuts. I think to myself, there's no way this guy has 9-3. So I make the big hero call. Guess what he turns over? 9-3. All I'm saying is, predicting ranges only works for the weaker players. It doesn't work for every poker opponent. Alright, let's get into it.
Between now and April, no later than May of next year,
Well, hello everybody. It's been a while since we did a video, but I plan to gear up a little bit before the World Series, do some study of my own, and possibly give you guys some insight into what people study today and how poker's evolved. And we're going to title this video Familiarizing Yourself with Ranges, or something along those lines. And essentially, for a lot of you, this will be somewhat elementary. If you're one of the younger generation, you've probably already put in a lot of work using, maybe, were poker fans or players during the era of 2004 to 2010. This is all stuff that's going to be, for the most part, pretty new to you. So typically when I do a video where I'm breaking down a hand, I try to stay as generic as possible. Like, he could have this, but then, like, if I raise this, and I try to keep the way in which we discuss the hand to a very elementary level for the most part, in such a way that you'll understand it. And what I want to do here is familiarize yourself and help familiarize you a little bit more with the idea behind ranges and sort of how that's developed over the years. And when we think back to, say, again, the heyday, the 2004 era, poker worked. Nobody actually used the term range. It just wasn't a thing. I mean, obviously people put people on ranges of hands, but it looked a lot different than it does today. So, for example, if I raise under the gun.
Before he gets into this example, I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm bored already. Like, I'm into this video for 1 minute and 23 seconds already. I've retained very little no information. Let's just put it that way. And I'm bored. If I was laying down watching this video right now, probably would have been asleep.
And a very tight player to my left re-raised me in second position. Well, I've got him on a range of hands, but I didn't think of it in those terms. I would think like, okay, well, this guy either has aces, kings, queens, or ace-king, okay? Which we're going to actually really break down this specific situation into, combos and how decisions are made based on once you can like pinpoint people on a range. But I want to look specifically at this example just to give you an evolution and show you how this whole topic has evolved. Like in the old days, you raise under the gun, player 3-bets you from under the gun +1. Many players existed where their range was simply queens, kings, aces, or ace-king. That means basically those are the only hands they would do that with. Every other hand, they would flat call or fold. So like ace-queen, they're going to flat, jacks, tens, they're going to flat, right? So now let's say you're sitting there with jacks specifically. And now the flop comes 8-5 deuce. Well, there is also a certain number of players who are always betting overpairs and checking back when they don't have an overpair.
All right. Like his display. Let's point out that this is a rainbow board. However, even though you have overpair, you cannot rule out pocket deuces, pocket fives, or pocket eights. You can't rule that out the range.
Because obviously I raise under the gun, which is a strong position, and I call the re-raise. So typically in this spot, what players would do is if they had the aces, kings, or the queens, they would bet, and if they had the ace-king, they would check. So essentially, this was like the person's range.
At this point, I'm lost. I don't know what he's talking about calling a re-raise here. I wouldn't even bet. There's no reason to bet here. I don't see one. But if someone bet into me here, I would just call.
Range was exactly one hand, which was ace-king. Well, so obviously, these types of players are not what you're going to find in most tournaments or cash games. People have a much wider range of hands that they're going to re-raise with, some suited connectors, but there was a time when there were plenty of players that fit right into this category, and it was very easy to have, they would have such a narrow range before the flop and a 3-bet pot in the situation, then their bet would dictate even more, closely exactly what that range was. And the check specifically represented exactly one combination of hands, and that was always ace-king. So you could play accordingly with your jacks by simply calling the raise pre-flop, and then on the 8-5 deuce flop, check folding. I'm not kidding. Check folding to a lot of these players. Whereas if they check back, your jacks are good, provided an ace or a king doesn't hit the turn or river. Gus Hansen, I remember back in 2005, played a hand so strangely where everyone was like, what did you do there? There was a hand where he had jacks, and he was pretty confident his opponent had ace-king, but he didn't get in pre-flop. The board came really nice for him, like 8-5 deuce type situation. He checked back the flop, checked back the turn on a brick, and then was waiting. He knew what the player had. He was quite certain he had ace-king, but also felt like because it was Gus Hansen that the player was going to call him anyway. So he decided to just literally wait to see if he would get beat, and then he knew he was going to get paid on the river. So he checked it all the way down the river, a blank hit. He went all in with the jacks. The player called with the ace-king.
Promise you, regardless of where you are right now in your life, in debt, broke, no job, got a job, and $1 million career.
I guess another way to look at the evolution, I've mentioned this before, maybe in the podcast or whatever, but it really rings true, is, poker used to be, right, it's
Oh, Grant Cardone. I guess I'll leave him in the video because he was on Action Junkies, so.
Elementary level, it was like, the thought process is what is my hand versus what is their hand? Like, what do I have and what do I think they have? And am I ahead or am I behind or am I getting the right price? Simple, hand versus hand. Then that developed into, what is my hand, because you know what you have, versus the entire range of hands your opponent could have. And then you play accordingly from there. Well, that evolved even further to understanding in certain situations, playing my range against my opponent's range. And this is going to be really important if you really want to get to the sophisticated level of playing.
Okay. First off, in order to even evaluate my range versus my opponent's range, I got to have a range. And me having a range in poker is a bad thing. So why have one?
this game at a high level, because you have to be very cognizant of what your range can and cannot entail, or what it's weighted to or what it's not. Because against really smart opponents, in certain situations, if you're trying to make a bluff or trying to make a move, they'll understand that based on the way you play the hand pre-flop and on the flop, it doesn't add up. The story doesn't, hold true, if you will. And, another way to look at that too is there's going to be some flops or some boards where one player is just going to have what's called a range advantage. And essentially what that means is, one player is more likely to have a stronger hand in a certain situation. So for example, if, my doggy's barking. So for example, if under the gun player raises and the big blind calls and the flop comes ace-7 deuce rainbow, well, the player with the range advantage there would be the under the gun player, because a big percentage of the range of hand.
Okay, at this point, I'm lost. I know he's about to explain it. At this point, I'm lost. It's a rainbow board. Nobody should be betting. He's saying the under the gun player has the advantage. Against what opponent?
Hands that the under the gun player is going to play is going to contain an ace. Whereas the big blind, especially if there's antes, is going to be priced in to play a lot more like 6-8, 5-6, and garbage.
What about a 7 deuce?
And so in this situation, it's important for the under the gun player, whether he has the ace or not, to understand that he has a range advantage. So even if you do have something like 10 jack suited, you should still often be betting here, because you simply have more hands in your range that are going to connect with that flop.
Okay, so right here, I don't understand the difference between range advantage and position advantage. Now, granted, it's based on your opponent. Because if you're against an opponent who folds all the time, then yes, under the gun has the advantage, because they get to act first. They can bet, and if they bet, they then know whether their opponent has something or not. So that's what I'm saying. I don't understand the difference between range advantage and position advantage. I think it's all based on who you're playing against.
Then the big blind will. We're going to look back again at the classic one, the jacks, versus where you think the player's range is aces, kings, queens, or exactly ace-king. So there are going to be situations where, even today, you still may find yourself in this situation. So the question is, how do you figure out if that's the opponent's range? Should you continue with the jacks? Let's say, for example, you opened, the player's gone all in, and you're sitting there with jacks. Well, there's obviously other considerations, like what stage you are in the tournament, there's a whole bunch of other things to think about. But if you're just thinking about in a vacuum, are jacks getting the right price to continue? Well, the way to do that, or one of the ways to do that, is, of course, we look at the pot odds we're getting, right? But then we can count the combinations of cards or hands that the player could have that beat us versus the ones that don't. So, for example, what is the one that we're ahead of, if you will? Well, we're ahead of ace-king only, right? Because we're behind aces, kings, or queens. Well, how many combinations of ace-king are there? Think about that for a second.
Okay, obviously there's only 4 combinations of ace-king, I believe. Right? 4 kings, 4 aces. You split them up. I could be wrong. But anyway, I don't know about this ace-king theory, but I know I could never rule out a set. And I have been known to fold in the wrong spot before. Not perfect, but I'm just explaining to you why I don't understand this video.
Alright, so you got one ace, plays with 4 kings. You got another ace, plays with 4 kings. Another ace with 4 kings. Another ace with 4 kings. 16 combinations of ace-king that your opponent could have if this is the range that you put them on. Well, how many combinations of aces, kings, and queens are there? Well, the simple way to do that is figure out how many combinations of a pair could there be. Well, if a pair of aces, how many combinations of aces could there be, right? You do the math here. You got ace of spades.
Look, to me, I know that I think about things too much and I overstand things. I think this kind of takes the cake, though.
Ace of spades, ace of clubs, ace of diamonds, ace of hearts, that's 3. Then you got the next 2, then you got 1. So 6 combinations per pair. So now, if you're in this situation, you're looking at 18 combinations that have you destroyed, where he's got aces, kings, or queens, and then 16 combinations where you're actually ahead. So it's pretty close. But of course, you have to factor in the fact that, like, when you are going to play against that range, you're in some trouble because the ace king is.
Okay, so as you guys can tell, I did learn something today. Okay, I now understand a little bit more about the numbers and the combinations of cards. However, I still can't apply it to the situation.
Still going to beat you a really significant part of the time. We call it a coin flip for a reason, because it's close to a coin flip. So 16 times you'll be in a coin flip situation. 18 times you're going to be a 4-to-1 dog. So if you did put your opponent on a range like that, it would probably be, especially in a tournament when you're looking to conserve chips and not get into as many coin flips, if that was your opponent's range and that's all they could have, unless they're very short on chips.
The average winning hand in No Limit Hold'em is 2 pair. No clue what Daniel's talking about here. Okay, there's 2 pair. There's a set.
Chances are you should still probably fold the jacks.
I'll agree with him on that. We'll just leave Global Poker in there. Shout out to Wayne. Shout out to Wayne live at the bike. He loves this site.
There's another term I want to touch on briefly, and I don't want to get too deep into it because it requires an entire video to itself, but when you're counting combinations, as we did there with, the 18 combinations of pairs versus 16 combinations of ace-king, sometimes you're going to have a piece of information that will block, if you will. We call these, you will block a certain number of combinations. So let's say, for example, you've got those jacks, and you're up against that player who has ace-king, aces, or kings, or queens, right? Well, what if you saw the dealer expose an ace? So there's one ace dead, and you're in this exact same situation. Well, what does that do to the combinatrix? Well, for one, it takes away 4 combinations of the ace-king, so you go from 16.
Once again, my thought process wouldn't even be relying on ace-king. And it doesn't change nothing. Because with my luck, even though an ace was exposed, my opponent could still have 2 aces. Unlikely, but
Down to 12, but it also takes away, 3 of the pocket aces combos. So then you're down from 18 to 15. So again, now, typically when you're looking at situations where you're going to use blockers to make a decision, it's usually not going to be because you see a flash card. It'll be because you have a certain card in your hand. And again, as I said, I don't want to get too deep into that, because what I really want to get you familiar with is understanding ranges and how that leads into combinations of cards and how that's going to help you in tough situations make more sophisticated decisions, right? So it's not like old school poker. It's like, well, you know what? I think he's got that. Well, let's count. If we put him on a range of hands, like how many combinations have he beat? How many combinations are value? And then how many combinations could he have that might be bluffs? And so we're going to do a series of videos, I think, leading up to the World Series, where I'm going to sort of extend this kind of thought process and breaking down hands a little bit more from a sophisticated manner rather than just kind of like, he's got this, he's got that. But I want to do so in such a way that you really understand. So in the comments down below, if any of this mumbo jumbo starts to sound like, what are you talking about? You're jumping ahead, put the comments down there. Myself or maybe somebody else who's smart will explain that to you. But
we'll do one better. Make a video review for you. Probably never see it, but it's up.
I really would like to do some more high-end hand breakdown videos, but that's going to require, I think, a different type of way that we speak about hands in general. We're going to have to get a little, not nerdy per se, but we're going to have to get a little more high-end. So hopefully you guys enjoy this style of video. We are going to roll out probably about 1 a week till the World Series of Poker, and then likely kick up the World Series of Poker vlogs daily. And throughout the World Series of Poker, we're also going to be doing, of course, as is part of any poker blog, a bunch of hands. And I'm going to try to give a little bit more nuanced, higher-end breakdowns than what you're used to. But we're going to do it at a pace that you're comfortable with. So please let me know in the comments down below, as I said, whether you feel like there's value in this and that you are digesting it in such a way where you feel like you're really getting it.
All right, so in this video, I've learned nothing except the fact that I've reassured myself that I'm not perfect. You guys all know that I'm not perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, me included. Got the number of hand combinations wrong. Didn't matter anyway. Wasn't even thinking that way. And I just don't think in the avenue of ranges when I play anymore. I just don't. Been around the country, seen too much crap, played with too much crap, and won myself. It's all about the opponent. Need more opponent info. Ranges. Okay, obviously there's only 4 combinations of ace king. Alright guys, so obviously I can't hold a candle to Daniel Negreanu. And I do realize that this video has some time on it. Some time has passed since he's made it. Just explain to you why I don't understand his mindset. And maybe that's what the difference is between me and him. But if you study poker, you felt like I feel, and sometimes you just don't understand it, well, you're not alone. Now, I do have a few poker training videos up myself. If you want to get back at me, if you want to check out my content, feel free to leave your own video review about the stuff I make. Go for it. Have at it. Have fun.